we have to have a strong legal team to keep the PPP busy and to represent our support base. I promise you as party leader, there will be such a team. And I want you to know this, not because somebody supported another candidate when I become leader, that person is dead. I believe this party has been destroyed in some regard by this approach in which when one doesn't support you, you decide that that person has to die, has to be marginalized. We will change that. There are going to be many people who did not support me, but who have the requisite skill that will be in the leadership of the People's National Congress. We will unite this party. And I believe it is fairly easy for me to unite the party. I think I'm still the only candidate that didn't attack another candidate. And I allow them to attack, even be malicious. But you know why I don't attack? I don't attack because I know for the unity of this party, I will have to work with my attackers. And so I will have the basis to relate to them. And I want you as comrades in this region to understand that sometimes we are extremely hard on our own, but soft on our opponents. I intend to change that. I want to be strong against my opponents, but soft on my own. I believe that is the basis for unity. And I want
We'll open the gap. got to unite. Brother and sister say we've got to unite. So
what is the politics behind the impending postponement of Congress? Will the PNCR implode if there is jiggery pokey with the process? How will Vincent Alexander decide? Is there a plot to kill Aubrey Norton's bid for the leadership? Is the PNCR crafting its own destruction by the move to postpone Congress at a time when members and supporters are fired up and ready to close ranks with a party and confront a dictatorship? This and more as Firebrand, former Member Parliament of the People's National Congress, Mr. Phillip Bynoe and Grassroots political observer, Mr. Bevon Wint, join me here on Voice of the Diaspora. Phillip Bynoe, former Member of Parliament of the People's National Congress and a popular businessman at Linden, and Mr. Bevon Wint, a Lindener also, based in the United States, who is a grassroots political observer. They join me now to talk about the impending postponement of Congress that is set for this weekend. Before we go into that topic, though, let me welcome you, gentlemen, and give you a minute to introduce yourselves. There's a lot of noise in your background there, Bevon. There's a lot of noise. I think it's your headphones, so if you can probably plug that out of your device. Yeah, it's a lot of static there.
Better now?
No, it's a lot of static there. Mr. Phillip Bynoe, welcome to the program. A minute for your introduction. It's okay now, Bevon. Mr. Bynoe, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but apparently the noise
Yes,
is coming when
yes. No, it's not from my device. It's from Mr. Wint's device. It's not from my device.
I think I'm gonna disconnect this. I'll try to disconnect this.
Okay, you may have to disconnect it and speak from Good. So the noise is gone. Well, Mr. Bynoe, your introduction.
Well,
Somebody device is making a lot
men,
of noise.
well, I know it's not mine. Well,
I'm disconnected.
many a
So
persons
let
know
us
me.
let us yes, it's gone now. Go ahead, Mr. Bynoe. There's a lot of sound
It's
coming.
not really gone, you know.
No, it's not really gone. It's still.
Perhaps
Hang up and call back.
perhaps Voice of the Diaspora is being sabotaged by some.
No, it's all right now, Mr. Bynoe. Go ahead. Mr. Bynoe, I think it's your device because
Yes,
now
no, I was saying that many a persons know me, but I'm Phillip Bynoe from Linden, and I'm a businessman. Past, and some would say still present. I'm a card-bearing member of the PNC. I think I'm a delegate for this upcoming Congress. This will be a Congress with a difference. It will be a Congress with a difference in the sense that I know they will be different. There will be mini Congresses in the 10 or 11 jurisdictions that we have. And I think that there is going to be also the elections will be decentralized and held in the different regions. But let me me quickly talk about this issue of postponement of the Congress or impending
Mr.
postponement
Bynoe,
of
the
the
static is
Congress.
coming from your device. It's coming from your side there. It's definitely coming from your side. Um, yes, it's coming. It's definitely coming. Good night, viewers. We are trying to get things set at the moment. We're trying to.
Norman, all that I have is a phone.
Yeah, but there's a static
I
coming.
don't have anything else, but in any way connected to anything. It's not. There's nothing more I can do. It's just a phone.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Bynoe. Go ahead. As you were saying.
Yes, I was saying that the impending postponement of the Congress. Let me back up a bit, and before I talk about the postponement of the Congress or impending postponement of the Congress. Norman, you see, the People's National Congress is a strong party. Over the past 3 or so years, it may have been divided, and that division caused it to appear weak and caused it to present itself as being weak.
Yeah.
There are too many factors to consider with respect to the role that the PNC played in shaping Guyana and the role that the PNC has to play in the future, in Guyana's future. No matter what anyone may wish, no matter what the people in the PPP may wish, my friends, Anil Nandlal, Bharat Chagdio, no matter what they may want to wish in terms of the demise of the PNC, it will not happen. It cannot happen. And I think that they know it will not and it cannot happen. It is a similar scenario as the PNC leaders wishing the demise of the PPP. The PPP will not be demised. It cannot happen. It will not happen. So these two political parties that have charted the course for Guyana since before independence unto today, in the foreseeable future, will continue to chart the course for Guyana. And that is why sometimes I ask why the hell the two parties can't come together and deal with their differences. And their differences are petty when you examine them carefully. Their differences are petty. But now that the PNC is having its Congress, the PPP has been demonstrating quite a lot of interest in the PNC's Congress because the PPP will fashion its future strategy based on the nature of leadership of the PNC. And that is why it appears as though everyone in the so-called middle and upper classes are coming against Aubrey Norton because they perceive Aubrey Norton as being the grassroots contributor.
We're getting a lot of static there. Go ahead, Mr. Bynoe. We're getting a lot of static there coming in. What it is definitely coming. Is this something grazing somewhere at your end? It is. We gonna let us take a short. let us take a short break, guys. If you can hang up and call, not, Mr. Bynoe, if you can hang up and call back right away, I would appreciate that.
All right.
We've got to unite. We've got to unite. Come on, people, say we've got to unite. Brother and sister, say we've got to unite. Why can't we unite? Lord, I wanna know now. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, can't we?
Yes, we are encountering some technical difficulties. Of course, it's not coming from my end. I think it's definitely coming from Mr. Bynoe's end. As you can see, I'm here now and talking to you, and there is no sound. I don't think it was coming from Mr. Wint end. I rather suspected that it was coming from Mr. Bynoe's end. But of course, we get these hiccups. Sometimes we have to be patient. Welcome all of my viewers. Please share this live, and we will get into the gist of the program when our guests return.
We have to have a strong legal team to keep the PPP busy and to represent our support base. I promise you as party leader, there will be such a team. And I want you to know this, not because somebody supported another candidate when I become leader, that person is dead. I believe this party has been destroyed in some regard by this approach in which when one doesn't support you, you decide that that person has to die, has to be marginalized. We will change that. There are going to be many people who did not support me, but who have the requisite skill that will be in the leadership of the People's National Congress. We will unite this party. And I believe it is fairly easy for me to unite the party. I think I'm still the only candidate that didn't attack another candidate. And I allow them to attack, even be malicious. But you know why I don't attack? I don't attack because I know for the unity of this party, I will have to work with my attackers. And so I would have the basis to relate to them. And I want you as comrades in this region to understand that sometimes we are extremely hard on our own, but soft on our opponents. I intend to change that. I want to be strong against my opponents, but soft on my own. I believe that is the basis for unity. And I want to urge you, it must become part of a culture where we work together, support our party members, support our communities. But when people violate our interests, they must feel it and face it condignly.
We've got to unite. We've got to unite. Come on, people, say we've got to unite. Brother and sister, say we've got to unite. Why can't we unite? Lord, I wanna know now. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, can't we unite? Lord, why can't we unite? Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, can't we unite? Lord, united we stand, so divided we fall. We must unite, double these walls, Lord. 400 years, divided too long. We must unite, if we must be strong. Whoa, 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 whoa. Every time I look around, I see my people suffer, Lord. Every time I look around, I seem to feel the pain. Why can't we They say we've got to unite, so why don't we unite? Why, oh, why, oh, why?
Welcome back to the program, gentlemen. Mr. Phillip Bynoe and Mr. Bevon Wint here in the studio with me. Of course, we were encountering some technical difficulties. I think it's sorted now. It is perfect at the moment. I want to welcome my guests back to the program as we continue. Of course, we are talking about the impending postponement of the People's National Congress, and Mr. Bynoe was giving us his view. And so we shall return to Mr. Bynoe for him to continue, and we will take it from there. Mr. Bynoe, the floor is yours.
Yes, Norman.
Go ahead, Mr. Bynoe. Go ahead. Bevon, it's yours now. It's yours now, Bevon. Just stay still. You need to stay still.
You hear me?
Yes, stay still, Bevon.
Are you hearing me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you clearly, but you need to stay still at the moment. Go ahead, Mr. Bynoe.
Yes, Norman. Yes. I was saying that I'm very sorry for the little technical difficulties. It was coming from my phone. Well, I changed the phone. So
Thank you.
it is clearer now. Yes, I was saying that. Where was I? Yes. Both of these political parties will wish for the demise of the other, but it is not going to happen. So for generations to come, I think at least for the next generation, we are going to be stuck with these two parties. So the PNC is now having its Congress, and the PPP is demonstrating a keen interest in the Congress of the PNC. And they are doing so because depending on who emerges as the leader, that will determine the PPP's strategy, how they will fashion their strategy, how they will deal, how they will deal with Joe Harmon as against how they will deal with Richard Van West Charles, as against how they will deal with an Aubrey Norton. I understand that Basil Williams is in the race, but I don't think Basil is of any consequence in this leadership race. So a lot of the middle and upper class forces are going to come together to try to squeeze Aubrey Norton out of the race because they have recognized that Aubrey Norton is the front runner by far. Aubrey Norton is the front runner by far. And at the end of the day, the persons who are the front runners for the chairmanship of the party, and I'm referring to one person only in my mind, and that is Amanza Walton. Amanza Walton as a deputy leader to Aubrey Norton, and the Constitution specifies that the chairman, in fact, is the deputy leader. I think that those two persons will come together and identify a dynamic and upstanding general secretary. And I think they are going to have a very robust indeed, Central Executive Committee. So the PNC going forward is going to be strengthened and it is going to be restructured. So I don't think that there is anything to be sad about with respect to the future of the PNC. It is going to emerge stronger. But now, politics will always have shenanigans. People will always try to play politics in politics. And that is what is happening with this movement or motion that was cast at the last Central Executive Committee meeting for the postponement of the Congress. Okay, um, the persons that are behind in the race, and they will know that they are behind, they must not think that by postponing the Congress, they are going to somehow change the fortunes. It is not going to happen. Aubrey Norton is going to get more and more and more support because he is genuine, because he doesn't have baggage. You understand? And because we know we can rely on Aubrey Norton to bring to the table a very genuine and grassroots approach to the management of the PNC. I know this word grassroots has a lot of, naysayers today, but it doesn't matter. We all understand what we mean by the use of the word. So I don't think that the postponement of the Congress is going to have any effect on the elections. If the Congress is held in January, if it's held in February, if it's held in March, they will not stop Aubrey Norton from becoming leader of the party. The other two main contenders have too much baggage. Well, it's not that Richard Van Westcharles has much baggage. It's a question of your personality as a leader and your whether you have the belly, whether you have the oomph. That is the problem that Richard has. With respect to Mr. Harmon, how shall I put it over for Mr. Harmon? Mr. Harmon has to understand that throwing money into a pot does not mean that the pot will be tasty for the people who eat the food. I think I've tried to put it over as best as I can. So Aubrey Norton, and let me digress a bit. The person that they have chosen, that the Central Executive Committee, the person that they have chosen to analyze where the preparations for Congress stands at the moment, whether the preparations are ready for the 11th, or whether if the preparations are not ready for the 11th, how early it can be ready, because for a Congress and elections that will determine the character of the PNC for decades to come after this one, we need to have all the ducks in the row. And I think the Central Executive Committee have chosen the perfect person to do this analysis. Vincent Alexander stands heads and shoulders above many others in the PNC when it comes to integrity and honesty and his objectivity as to how he will analyze what he has before him. So Vincent was the best choice. Vincent is not going to pull any punches, and Vincent is not going to come down prematurely on any side. When the leader of the party is elected, Vincent Alexander will be there to provide support to that leader. So Vincent is the best man to be, can I say the ombudsman, or can I say the arbiter in this arbitration process? Whatever you can call it. But Vincent is the best man that they could have chosen. So hats off to the Central Executive Committee. But Norman, final point, the postponement is neither going to be here nor there. If Vincent say postpone, well, then we should all accept that that is the best approach. If Vincent said it could happen on the 11th, then we should all accept that it could very well happen on the 11th. So it's no big deal. Whether they postpone or don't postpone, they cannot stop the Aubrey Norton's train. And the elections will be held in 10 or 11 jurisdictions. So there will be 10 or 11 returning officers. So the scrutiny for the ballots will be there. And there will be decentralized results. The results can't go to Congress Place and throw into one bag and shake up and then come out again. The results will be coming from 10 or 11 different regions. So it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to rig those results. So I expect clean elections. Let Vincent say whether we're ready, we need some more time, or we're not ready. We should take Vincent's word and let us run with it.
Former MP, Mr. Phillip Bynoe, they're very eloquent and articulate. Brilliant politician, been around for decades as a member of the People's National Congress. Before I go to Mr. Wint, Mr. Bynoe, because it's interesting what you're saying there, but I want you to touch on these two questions before I go to Brother Bevon Wint. It was quite sudden the way a motion was moved at the final hour, I would say, so to speak, to suspend the Congress, and that motion was moved by my good friend Annette Ferguson, who is an MP, and who would have come out in support of Mr. Harmon's candidacy. That motion was moved by Annette Ferguson. I want to ask you this first question. What do you deduce from that? Is that foul play? Is it, was it genuine? Is it coming from Mr. Harmon's camp? People feeling, the supporters, or they're feeling that maybe he is losing based on what is out there, and they're trying to stall, they're trying to delay, they're trying to... What is your take on it? I would trust your judgment and your position on it.
Norman, my friend, like I said, in politics there must be shenanigans, and politicians who play all kinds of fancy in the pan out the pan games. Listen, we know that Annette Ferguson is a staunch supporter of Joseph Harmon. And we know when she goes to the Central Executive Committee and she moves a motion that to postpone the Congress, that motion comes from the strategy room of the Joe Harmon camp. You don't have to put on special binoculars to see that. From the time I heard that, I said, yes, this is a Harmon play, because they don't sense that they're losing. They know that they're losing. They see that they're losing. They're experiencing that they're losing, because they know where the support for Aubrey Norton is coming from. And they know that that support will not diminish, nor will it die. It will only grow. It will only grow. So Annette's motion, seconded by who? Or if the Central Exec didn't second the motion, but they decide to defer it, or whatever they decided to do, I am surprised. But I know the strategy is, while Joe Harmon sits on the Central Executive Committee, you will not find him moving that motion. It is a typical game, but it will not stand. It will not pass muster. Trust me, it will not.
Mr. Bynoe, wonderful, wonderful. I'm very touched by what you're saying. It's very clear and it's concise. It's straightforward and it is going straight to the heart. Let me ask you this question before I bring in Bevon. When you look at the call for Norton's leadership from the inception, you have been around the party from Phillip Bynoe time. You've been around, you've been there with those who would have been there as long as whatever. When you look at the wave of support coming Aubrey Norton's way, have you seen that in the party before? Have you seen that sort of call for a leader from the grassroots, some people across the board? Have you seen any sort of situation in the party where people began to lose confidence in the party because of the leadership of the party, and people saying enough is enough, it is time for a leader, and they went into the depths of the party to look for someone who has been sidelined, to look for someone who had not played a part in the last government that would have spent under 5 years in government? When you look at this scenario today and you look back at the days of party activism and so on, juxtapose the two and speak to the young people today about what you feel, how you see it.
Yeah. You've asked me a mouthful there. Let me dissect what you've asked me. Number one thing the PNC has to thank David Granger for, although not of his commission, but not of his commission, but his omission. What David Granger did by his weak leadership of the party and the government, what David Granger did was to push the party to the place where it is today. And the place where it is today is not such a happy place, but it is a place where political ferment is taking place, where we're having political tumult, where different members of the party are pitting themselves one against the other to vie for leadership, chairmanship, vice chairmanship, and members of the central exec. I have never seen the PNC in this modus of ferment. I have never seen it. During the days when Phillip Bynoe was leader, there was only one candidate for leader, and no other candidate dared to come forward and challenge the leader unless that candidate was approved. I wouldn't go in to say what I mean by approved, but nobody challenged Phillip Bynoe for leadership. When it was Desmond Hoyt, it was almost the same thing. And if Dr. Ptolemy Reed didn't die before his time, Dr. Ptolemy Reed would have been where Desmond Hoyt was. And nobody would have dared to challenge Dr. Ptolemy Reed. But now we have challengers because the days of the one-man supreme leadership of the days of the one-man supreme maximum leadership are dead. In the 21st century, democracy is the order of the day. And a man or woman must come forth and prove their bona fides before they can be elected as leader. And we must remember that the leadership of the PNC, or the leader of the PNC, serves for 2 years. For 2 years. That is the length of his tenure, 2 years. And after that, he must face the polls again. So if nothing untoward happens in Guyana, and elections are called in the next 4 years, or 3 years and X number of months, we have another PNC Congress and another PNC elections to determine who will be presidential candidate. And that is why I say all the time, we must separate the issue of governance and presidential candidates and all of that from the issue of the leadership of the party. We must do that separation, or else we will create confusion. So all of the noise settle. When all of the noise settle, PNC is going to have its Congress. There is no point in postponing the inevitable. The inevitable is Aubrey Norton will be leader. And I do not see the possibility of the votes being rigged with the counting of the votes in 10 different jurisdictions. And I rest my case.
Thank you. I'll get back to you because we still have more to discuss, Mr. Bynoe. Bevon Wint, welcome to the program. I know you are a man who understands grassroots, and you would have been following this leadership contest. Of course, you're a Lindoner, and when you would have seen what is happening today, when you look at what is happening today, in terms of the party leadership, when you would have looked at the current leader of the opposition and so many things that are being said about him in terms of his leadership, so many questions surrounding his leadership, were you surprised that the majority of the party members and supporters repose confidence in someone who was more connected to the grassroots people today?
Thank you, Norman, and thank you, Mr. Bynoe. And I know Mr. Bynoe of all the prerequisites to eloquently articulate that his political position about everything that goes on in Guyana politics, especially with the People's National Congress. And you've been around for an extremely long period of time, and a youth like myself look up to his leadership at the time when Desmond Orta lost the election, and the only voice we had in Region 10 was the voice of Mr. Bynoe. So I personally would not be able to challenge Mr. Bynoe's intellect and knowledge. Like I said, he has all the prerequisites to have this type of discussion with regards to Mr. Norton's leadership and leadership skills. Mr. Norton directly came from the tree of Lyndon Fab Sampson Burnham, which is one of the greatest leaders in the history of the Caribbean. Mr. Lyndon Fab Sampson Burnham has did a lot of big ticket items that bring about meaningful social economic changes in Guyana. We had Region 10 housing program, Wiz Rock housing scheme, Amelia's ward, free education from North City University, and we could go on. And one of the greatest accomplishments, in my opinion, that Burnham have accomplished, and Mr. Norton was always in that position, in that place, to recognize those accomplishments and to be a part of those accomplishments and be the learning from one of the greatest political men in the history of the Caribbean. It was 1973, the Treaty of Chaguaramas, when Guyana as Guyana geographically is a part of South America, and Burnham bring that country into an economic machine called the CARICOM. So some major accomplishments in the People's National Congress in the past. And so far, in the PPP regime, under the PP regime, previous PP regime, and the present PP regime combined, haven't accomplished anything, in my opinion, that the People's National Congress has accomplished. But I want to give this conversation a new direction. I think most of our electorate demographically would look at it from the standpoint of what type of pocketbook issues are we talking about with regards to leadership. And if you want to look at Guyana in general, like I explained this to you on countless occasions with regards to Guyana's population, and I'm going to give it economic consciousness. Because political accomplishment should not be an abstract concept in the minds of the youths in Guyana. It should be met with economic progress that the average electorate could recognize and to talk about. But this is not the first time I've ever witnessed a situation like what's happening to Norton happens. In 2016 in the United States, the Democratic caucus, headed by Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama, unpicked Hillary Clinton to become the next presidential candidate. She was challenged by Bernie Sanders, who is directly a socialist, which is directly an ideology of the People's National Congress. And support by the people were for Sanders. And the narrative started changing on Sanders, and it was actually given, I would say, in the polls to Mrs. Clinton. And we see what happened in the results. The people did not vote Hillary Clinton as president because some of the Democrats, I would safely say, and independents, voted for Donald Trump to be the next president. In the next 4 years, America have been through so much social and economic destruction. America have seen changes in so many different ways, and this president is impeached twice, and this president was directly involved in interfering with the democracy of this country on January 6th. The people has the power to elect the best leader to lead them into the polls. So let's check out some of the pocketbook issues that most of the electorate would want to hear about. Now, one of the things you and I talk about, Norman, is that a lot of times I think that Guyanese lack social and economic consciousness, where they look at the political landscape from the time Barnum leave to current, and there aren't many economic changes. So let's see how we could be able to distribute some of the economic benefits of the country, and that's basically.
But before we go to the economy, we're kind of dealing with a party Congress. We're not dealing with the national elections at this juncture.
Okay.
So the question I was asking is in terms of when you look at it from a grassroots position perspective, because that's where we came from. You and I came from that kind of background.
Yes, but
hold on.
Obviously,
and so we're looking at like Harmon's leadership as leader of the opposition. He was Minister of State in the coalition government. When the government would have fallen, I wouldn't say lost the elections. When the government would have fallen, he became leader of the opposition, and for a year plus, we saw what happened. We saw what happened, and so today there has been a call in relation to looking for a leader that people think would deliver at party level and prepare the party for national elections. So when you look at Norton's, you see the bid is happening now, and the grassroots crying for Norton. Harmon is there with a lot of money. He's a leader of the opposition, and it appears as if no one wants him. How do you see it?
And I see it as the same way Mr. Bynoe expresses that concern. And it's a concern that Guyanese people have to be very careful with. Mm-hmm. Guyanese people recognize, like I mentioned earlier, the type of contribution Mr. Norton have demonstrated for over the years being in politics. I think he's one of the most loyal party member. You've never crossed the floor. He challenged Robert Corbin. He challenged Hoyt. He challenged all those guys for leadership, but they never give him that position. The question is, why would they not give him that position if he's the best candidate when the electorate is actually crying for him? And that's why I kind of piggyback off of the economics of it. Because at the end of the day, who is the best candidate to change the economic condition of the people, which is grassroots? Because, you know, we could sit back and we could articulate positions after positions all night. And the electorate would want to know, what would my condition be
tomorrow
after we select a member of the party? And I personally know that I mentioned earlier that we had great progress under the People's National Congress. Barnum was the leader at the time. And Aubrey Norton was a protege. He was directly a brainchild of those accomplishments. Sometimes when the West get involved, we said, oh, Barnum wasn't doing all the right things, because Barnum recognized what the West was doing. And he tried to create something independent mind. So most of the grassroots people would want a man like that to bring about the type of political change, which is key, would bring about economic change, which is most important to the average electorate that would be going to the general election eventually when Norton becomes the leader of the party. And I would even throw an extra person in there. I know he's not politically affiliated, but we want minds like Aubrey Norton, a loyalist, grassroots, and we want minds like Mr. London from Linden, Nigel London. Those are the type of guys who I think people trust. I think they're honest. I think people would understand. I know I saw the type of work Nigel is doing in current political environment in Guyana. So with that being said, I personally recognize that the best man to lead a national election would be Aubrey Norton.
Okay, but we're looking at the party leadership. Let me go to Mr. Bynoe, because we're going down into the crux of the issue now, and we need to straight talk tonight. Phillip Bynoe, former member of parliament, very, very militant during the days of his political involvement, you know, and we know that Mr. Bynoe would have stood up and challenged the People's Progressive Party through powerful protest action and demonstrations, among other ways of confronting dictatorship and so on. Mr. Bynoe, I want to ask you this question, because you were comparing and contrasting the three leaders and even the fourth leader that you dismiss as inconsequential. But I want to ask you this because it's very important for the young people to hear and to understand. When you would have looked at the coalition government assuming office, you looked at its performance in office, and more so when it was out of office in 2020, and you saw the performance of the leader of the opposition. What were your thoughts?
Leader of the opposition. First of all, I have never regarded Mr. Joseph Harmon as a leader of me. I have never accepted him in my consciousness as a leader of anything. Secondly, Mr. Harmon, when he was Minister of State, he held a very esteemed position. I went to him with one problem that had to do with regularization of land. And he fobbed me off. He fobbed me off to Miss Annette Ferguson, who perhaps went back to him, and he probably told her ignore Bynoe and his request. So she also fobbed me off. Fobbed me off in the most disrespectful manner. Never answer their phones. You can't go and see them. And these are the people you are telling me now, when the APNU, and that their behavior to me was not singular. It was across the board. It interfered with the sense and well-being of their supporters. It deeply wounded their supporters. It caused their supporters to have deep pain and wounds. So Joe Harmon spending money to build a party office does not remove those pains. It does not heal those wounds. They think that it's so easy. This is the 21st century. If you want to lead me, you have to demonstrate empathy with me and my cause. You have to show that you take my cause into your bosom and you let it become your cause, and you advocate for my cause as your cause. Those guys did not do that when they were in government. I don't know what was wrong with them, but clearly they may have taken leave of their political senses if they felt that they can treat their base support, and for Mr. Roysdale Ford's attention, their grassroots support. And it is important that Roysdale understands that base support and grassroots support is the same thing. Perhaps when me and he meet, we will have that discussion. But they cannot presume they can treat their supporters in such a manner and then come to them now to support these same people to be leaders of the party, leaders of Forbes Burnham's party, leaders of the party that was built brick by brick. Do you know that Burnham visited almost every home in Guyana when he was building the PNC? That is the nature of the politics of this man called Forbes Burnham. And you want to lead his party and you brush aside the concerns of his supporters. What is the matter with you? And no kind of postponement and shenanigans and motions at the Central Exec Committee can interfere with destiny. The PNC needs someone who can relate honestly and from their heart with the supporters. Forbes Burnham was that man, and according to Bevon, Forbes Burnham bequeathed his mantle to different people. And the persons to whom he bequeathed his mantle, many are alive today, but they have been sidelined. And you will see a burst of energy rising from the bowels of the PNC when Aubrey Norton is elected as the leader of the party. You will see that energy.
Let us talk about this burst of energy, because it is important for the viewers to know that Region 10's MP, Jermaine Figueroa, would have endorsed Aubrey Norton's candidacy. He would have endorsed Aubrey Norton for the leadership of the party. And many people were surprised Christopher Jones would have endorsed Aubrey Norton. And those are people that many believe, many people believe would never compromise their principles in relation to the PPP. Many people believe that when it comes to Jermaine Figueroa, when it comes to Christopher Jones, there can be no bending, there could be no buying out. The PPP couldn't even attract their attention in the slightest way. And that is why I think that many people are saying that when it comes to Aubrey Norton, they know that he would take the challenge to the PPP. They are not sure about Joseph Armon. But let us go to this short clip of Jermaine Figueroa speaking about Aubrey Norton and his leadership.
Needs no introduction. He is a man of the soil. He is a political juggernaut, an individual who has a mass of experience, a mass of intellect, and who has the boldness that is required to confront this evil and wicked cabal of the PPP. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite Mr. Aubrey Norton. Thank you, members. It is no secret that Mr. Aubrey Norton, a man of the soil, a man of Linden and Region 10, is vying for the leadership of the People's National Congress reform. And it is imperative that I remind all of us that I specifically indicated to you, the members and delegates of this party, so that on E-Day, you know what it is that you have to do. And I know that you will do what is right and give them your support. You all will agree that the People's National Congress reform is at a crossroad, and it requires leadership with vision, leadership with charisma, leadership that the membership is asking for. We are up against a political party that is not playing church politics. So they need someone who has the vigor, who has the experience, who has the courage and the boldness to confront them on every issue. Someone who can represent every interest of the grassroots of this country, every interest that is affecting us as citizens, not only party comrades, because the party is a microcosm of Guyana, and Guyana is longing for new lead.
Wow, powerful. Bevon, when you listen to Jermaine Figueroa MP, Region 10 MP, and you look at it in the context of grassroots support today, you look at it in the context of ordinary men and women are no longer looking at politics from the sidelines. They're no longer taking a directive from a political party that has been traditional. When the party decides we're going to take Bynoe, Bynoe is the man. When the party decides we're going to remove Bynoe, the grassroots say, oh yes, the party is right. There seems to be a revolution in Guyana today, and that revolution is coming at a point when the country has become so wealthy with oil that people believe, supporters and members believe, that without strong leadership in the People's National Congress, they will never see economic progress under the PPP. When you look at that wave of supporters Mr. Bynoe spoke about, you can postpone the Congress for the next 8 months, for the next year. The support will not waver, it perhaps will get stronger. Do you see a revolution brewing that may escalate into something that would become national and phenomenal if this struggle is not given to those whom the poor and the grassroots are calling for?
Of course. Jamin Figueroa is the kind of guy who has the testicular fortitude to challenge any leader that in power. Jamin Figueroa is a man of the soil, as he mentioned about Aubrey Norton earlier. These guys work tirelessly to bring about the type of changes that the PNC reform was to bring about in the last election. Unfortunately, they didn't have the time to demonstrate and to bring those type of changes to the grassroots people. But like I was saying earlier, this voting demographic of 18 and above are different voting demographic from years past. These young people are not going to sit back and allow party politics to dictate and to direct the nation, direct the position of that country for the next how many years are there to come. Because we understand, the young people understand, based on what they've experienced under the PPP regime, how destructive they are. They were murdered, they were slaughtered, they weren't given opportunities in many social and economic areas to grow. All of the accomplishments that Lyndon Fab Sampson Burnham have brought to Guyana was disappeared and destroyed. And it was rewritten and it was replaced with nothing. So the young people, headed by Jamin Figueroa, Norton, and all the other youth leaders, Solomon and all those guys from Linden, would not sit back and allow party politics to direct and dictate the motion of the next election coming up to elect Aubrey Norton. Because like we said earlier, Norman, is that grassroots politics is important because we are reaching the climax of fatigue and we become nervous because at the end of the day, our economic conditions haven't changed. Because the foundation of the economic changes in Guyana directly comes from who we select at that next election. So those young people have to mobilize, come together, understand what's at stake. Because they are the most powerful in the collective electorate. They could be all America, we call congressmen in America, but they could call any representative they possibly can. All the delegates. Because at the end of the day, there would be a general election. And we not forget who supported the ideas of the right person to sit at the top of the throne. Like I said, listen, the social consciousness of the young people are rising. They're different from the time we were growing up. We were told to sit and shut up, don't talk much. We can challenge the powers be. It's different now.
No.
Pocketbook issues have to be met. Pocketbook issues are the most important issue in any election that Guyana is going to put forward next. So the leadership that we have currently, which is the People's Progressive Party, we see what the direction the country is going. We understand the lack of progress, the lack of social development. Young people are unable to find jobs, train in different programs, to be a part of the collective economic machine. We can't even be a part of the Caribbean economic machine that Chagarama actually want us to become. We unable to maximize those costs because there are no program that is put in place for us to sit back and enjoy and benefit. Most of us are leaving for better lives outside of Guyana.
Let me ask this question based on something you said. You mentioned some leaders, Jamin Figueroa, others, and you mentioned Sharma Solomon. At this juncture, we would have seen Sharma Solomon hastily return to the party, and Sharma Solomon would have gone against, the choice of others like Jamin Figueroa, Christopher Jones, and those people, and the thousands and thousands of grassroots supporters who are calling for a leadership coming from Aubrey Norton, a grassroots defender, someone who has been sidelined, a stone that the builder rejected, a stone that was never a part of the failure of the party. We saw recently that Sharma Solomon was brought back, Sharma is supposed to be a grassroots defender, but he would have come back into the fold. He would have endorsed Dr. Van West Charles, who has no history of being grassroots. He's bourgeois. He comes from that echelons and so on. And he was missing. Sharma Solomon would have come back and he would have supported Mr. Van West Charles' leadership. Then he would have delved almost immediately into saying that he's running for the leadership without saying what leadership he's running for. And then today he would have said, oh, I'm going for the chairman position. When you look at a grassroots defender like Sharma Solomon making those decisions, how do you feel?
I think, in my opinion, is a bitterness, in my opinion, is a bitterness of how the party treated him in the election that they won. I think he was probably promised a executive position in the People's National Congress regime, and it didn't happen. And I think he came back with that type of bitterness, and it would not do any good if that's the direction he's heading in, because the People's National Congress would be heading for political suicide if the young generation, the young leaders like Solomon and those other guys I mentioned, made sit back on the sidelines and make those type of decisions. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, the Afro-Guyanese are extremely medium in numbers, and you have to have a collective consciousness of the voting demographic that understand the type of intellect that those young leaders bring into the table.
Yeah.
And with those type of young intellect that involve and insert in the party, we know we can bring about the type of changes, because we understand it been years we had politicians in Guyana like 50 and that demographic and above. It's nice to have Jarman Fagego and those young, and Solomon could, there has to be some type of reconciliation that could take place. Yes. I think Solomon did a phenomenal job in Linden. I think the people in Linden love him, but it would be like Mr. Bynoe mentioned, a division in the party. We have to find the unity, because the People's Progressive Party is a heavy political machine that would be hard to demolish. Mm-hmm. So it takes every ounce of our energy, every ounce of our intellect, every ounce of our time, and all the grassroots people have to come out and to hold their members accountable for the new decision that they're going to make moving forward. Just like how the PPP, the People's National, the PNC reform won the last election. They won the last election with a lot of Indo-Guyanese crossing the floor of the AFC and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. In the general election, obviously we're not skipping the subject, but in the general election, because that is the ultimate goal, to win the general election. So you could bring about, like as I always mention, I'm very strong about this, some of the type of economic changes that we need. Guys, we've been talking politics for years. We've been talking politics and leadership for the time Guyana become independent in 1966. So from independent to republic to all these things, we were talking all these things, and we saw the type of changes in the time of Barnum. We saw big ticket item changes. Now it becomes different. Now it becomes where you're looking to the West for help. And obviously you have to, if you look at it economically in the way, we're not going to go into that part of that subject. Mm-hmm. But we have to look to the West because of what the West have done. But what we can do is select, like I mentioned this in the last discussion, select, like we have in this particular discussion now primarily, select the right member or leader. To guide the nation in that next very, very important pivotal election that be coming up. Because I don't think we in the diaspora, the Guyanese electorate, Indo and Afro-Guyanese, and all the 5 races in the country can deal with a next 5 to 10 years.
So you're saying when I asked the question about Sharma Solomon, you recognize that Sharma Solomon is needed in that struggle.
Yes,
hold on. But when you look at the decision he made, he was sidelined from the party. Aubrey Norton's candidacy began to take form, and the grassroots started to stand up and shouting, they need this leader. Sharma Solomon was brought back hastily, was given his party card overnight, and would have immediately moved to endorse Dr. Richard Van West Charles, and immediately after that would have endorsed himself to be leader. When you look at the grassroots call for a leader, and it was resounding, it is resounding. The question I'm asking you, how do you look at Solomon's decision, which is in direct opposition to that?
Well, like I said in my previous answer, that would be political suicide for Solomon and also for the People's National Congress Party. Because what we need is every single youth with intellect, skill, and some type of savvy to bring about the type of change that we need. I do not know how we're going to go about reconciling with Solomon. I have no idea we're going to go about putting those type of ducks in the rows where we could get him on board with Mr. Norton's candidacy. But to divide
he has the democratic right to do what he's doing. So there is, he has that right. That's the party's democracy.
From a grassroots movement standpoint, we do not have the numbers to create division. So what has to happen? There has to have the great compromise. So the question is, who are we going to elect or select to have that compromise discussion with Solomon? Because we need him. And I think he had a lot of respect in Region 10. And some Region 10 members would still, the electorate in the middle probably still follow him.
Yes.
And we cannot have the division amongst the grassroots movements. We need a united force movement heading into that direction.
At this juncture,
somebody would have to come off of the high horse, and create that type of compromise that we have to have in this party moving forward.
That's a beautiful point. That's a beautiful point.
Because we have no time, there's no time left. Because we're talking about the PPP machine. The PPP machine is a huge machine that we take a long time to remove them from power. There's no way that we could go into that election as a divided people. We need the young, we need the old, we need the savvy, we need the not so savvy. We need every human being that has some sense of understanding how the political machine work to be a part of this progress moving forward and just moving that one candidate forward.
In a united front. In a united way. Let me ask Phillip Bynoe the same question. Mr. Bynoe, before we wrap up, because when we would have dealt with this, we will conclude. But let me ask you this question. Bevon made the point that there is need for unity. There's no time for pulling away from each other and so on. The members and the supporters and Guyanese in general would have made a resounding call for an Aubrey Norton's leadership. And if an election is called tomorrow, we believe that they will back their call with action and vote Mr. Norton in as leader of the party. When you would have seen, as momentum grew for Norton's candidacy, Sharma Solomon was recalled, given a party card, and was catapulted for some reason into the leadership challenge. And that his pronouncements and his decision were for Van West Charles, whom not even a third, not even 3% of the electorate would have, 3% of our supporters would have even reposed confidence in. What is that politics? Take us through it, Mr. Bynoe.
Mr. Wint made a point just now that Sharma Solomon's behavior can be premised on and excused by the so-called bitterness that still resides within him for the way he was treated by the party. Bevon, let me tell you something, young man. Y'all don't know. Do you know that the party, through Joseph Harmon, employed Mr. Sharma Solomon somewhere at the office of the president for the life of the last government with a salary of $500,000 plus a month? Now, does that kind of cushion generates bitterness? I'm sure that the world did not know how badly the party treated Sharma Solomon, how badly the party sidelined Sharma Solomon, so bad that he was given a job that paid him $500,000 a month. Talk to me, Bevon. That is a serious sidelining. I wish I could be sidelined like that. I'm sure you and I wish you could be sidelined like that. So there is no need for bitterness of any kind. We must not see the democratic impulses that are at play in this up and down juggling for leadership, the PNC. We must not see it as division. Before this Congress or this impending Congress, the party was divided, and hence it was weak. But talking about division and weakness in the party, it brings me to an issue that requires clarification. I tried to make a point early on that even before independence, Guyana had PPP and PNC as the two leading parties. During the early days, we even had the United Force, which played a pivotal role in removing the Chedi Jagan government from office in 1964. But we are saddled with PPP and PNC. We must not believe that either of these parties can alone develop Guyana, because they can't. You spoke about some of the achievements of Phillip Bynoe. I won't want to go back there, but his achievements have been written into the annals of Guyana's history, and they cannot be erased. Okay? They cannot be erased. So when we're talking about electing a PNC leader that must speak to pocketbook issues, listen, we need to be very clear in our minds. We are electing a leader of the People's National Congress. We are not electing a presidential candidate. We are electing a leader of the People's National Congress. If we confuse the two, we're going to run into some serious problems. Because even though Mr. Aubrey Norton has put out as a part of his manifesto the fact that he is going to transform the PNC into a business-driven machine, that the PNC is going to invest. It is going to use a lot of the properties that it has to invest in different businesses for its members, because its members need that. That is one issue. But like I said, we go back to the polls in another 2 years, to elect another PNC leader. We don't know who that will be, and that leader may very well end up being the presidential candidate. But we don't know who that will be. So Mr. Aubrey Norton has an incentive to perform and perform admirably over the next 2 years. So, my friend, coming back to the issue of Sharma Solomon is a politician. He's one politician. He is not a demigod. He is one politician. I saw somebody calling him the other day Martin Luther King. Now they're doing this young man a great disservice by doing things like that. Why should they do things like that? Sharma Solomon is one politician that, do you know what is his claim to fame? His claim to fame is being regional chairman at the same time when the PPP increased the electricity bill by almost 1,500%, and the people rebelled. The people would have rebelled if there was a monkey in the seat of the regional chairman with a suit on. The people would have likewise rebelled. Anybody that would have been there, the people would have rebelled. And if the people rebelled, the regional chairman will then have no other role to play except to lead the people. So it was not something that came from within, that I consciously organized a region-wide protest against the government. No, that was not the case. So that is Mr. Sharma Solomon's claim to fame. We're not going to argue with it. In politics, opportunities arise and people take advantage of opportunities.
But Mr. Bynoe, he did navigate the turbulent waters well. Sorry to cut you. He did navigate the turbulent waters well. You can't make a comparison with any and everyone in the seat of an office that would have done it the way he would have done it. He was exceptional.
But you don't know, do you? You don't know.
But we know that we have seen leaders in position in troubled times. Joseph Harman is one. Joseph Harman could not even gotten rid of what's his name from the Mackenzie Hospital complex. He could not have stopped the sacking of the workers at the ambulance brigade, the ambulance service place, and so. When we look at leadership, we have to be honest, because when we look at Joseph Harman's leadership as leader of the opposition, he could not have even come into his stronghold and say to the PPP that this man that had insulted the CEO of the Mackenzie Hospital complex, that would have insulted and denigrated and was rude and nasty towards his nurses, that came out and protested and said they felt so insulted that they couldn't work with him. Mr. Harman could not even cause that situation to have a favorable outcome in his own stronghold. And I draw that analogy in all fairness to Sharma Solomon, though I don't agree with his position, in all fairness to Sharma Solomon, to say that as regional chairman during the electricity tariff, he would have navigated in an exceptional manner. Go ahead, sir.
I don't know what you mean by navigated. I don't know. I really don't know what you mean by navigated.
Go ahead.
Have you ever seen, Norman? Have you ever seen a real protest that was led and fomented by the people's grievance? The people's grievance does not require a leader. People see the opportunity in upheaval and tumult. when the people have a real, genuine grievance, and when the people rise up, the person who is there as the political leader at the time jumps on that bandwagon. History is replete with occurrences of this nature. But enough of that.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
want to go back to what you were saying just now about Joseph Harmon could not remove the CEO of the hospital. Joseph Harmon doesn't have no authority or power, nor political oomph, nor suave, nor gaff, nor mama guy to remove nobody from no hospital.
To cause them to be removed. To cause them to be removed.
Okay, to cause them to be removed. Do you know that man at the hospital, what's his name, Mr. Small?
Yeah.
He is still there as the CEO. Do you know that the only persons that can remove him are A, the Minister of Health, or B, the Vice Chairman, the Vice President, or C, the President, in that order? They're the only three persons in this country that can call his removal.
The only three persons that can institutionally remove him in terms of going through the process. But when you talk, let me just, you get where I'm coming from. Okay, go ahead.
How do you see, break it up for me, because perhaps I missed you.
Yeah.
How do you see Joe Harmon causing the removal of Mr. Small?
I can't answer that question. I'll tell you why. Because I can't see Joe Harmon causing the removal of anybody. The only removal I can see is him causing himself to be removed from the leadership of the party. And that is what he's holding on to at the moment. The point I'm making to you is this.
He's not the leader of the party now.
No, sorry. The leader of the opposition. Sorry, the leader of the opposition. I meant the leader of the opposition. Right? Look, when you look at politics, you look at constituencies, you look at opposition and government. When infractions are caused, when wrongs are done to your constituencies, as the leader of the opposition, as the opposition, you have the right, you understand, to make moves to ensure that if the people do not repose confidence in someone in that constituency, and it is justified, if people don't repose confidence and that government says, regardless of the wrong that that officer or CEO or member or executive would have committed, is not moving, it is the opposition that decides that that person has to go, or the consequences that would form a national struggle. The point I'm making to you is this, Philip, and you know it. You led a protest against the PPP civic government. You led a protest against the PPP that the entire Caribbean and the world looked up and said, wow. So the point I'm making is this. If I voted for you, if 200 and something thousand people, 300,000 people voted for the opposition and not the government, and the government decides to pressure those people, it is the opposition that has to confront that government by any means necessary to ensure that the national spoils must be had by those that did not vote for that government. That's the point I'm making.
All right. You made a point earlier, and I have to comment on it before I go, but you made a point earlier. But just to round off what you're saying, look, what you're saying there, Norman, is very well understood. But you need to accept the fact that 219,000 persons voted for the APNU AFC opposition
coalition.
But after the elections and all the cabinet ministers of that time disappeared, and they really literally disappeared, after they disappeared, the people had no leader, had no recourse to leadership. They couldn't speak to anybody because there was nobody that wanted to represent their cause. They drew what they had to draw, they took what they had to take from the 5 years of governance, and they gone. They all right, okay? Their pockets are filled, they live in nice mansions, and so forth. And so they are all right, okay? So mobilizing the 219,000 people that voted for you, it was a non-starter. It was a non-starter, and no opposition worth its salt can mobilize anything and anybody if the people are discontented, if the people are angry, if the people are upset, and that led to division, and the division led to the weakness of the PNC. So let the division go by appointing or electing a leader who we feel is going to rebuild the party. That is going to take some time. I am not electing Aubrey Norton or supporting Aubrey Norton as a presidential candidate per se.
Exactly.
I am supporting Aubrey as leader of the party.
Yes.
I don't want to confuse the two.
Yes,
Let
I agree.
me see how Aubrey will perform
as
in
leader
another
of the
2 years
party,
when Congress
yes,
will be called again. And let us see how it will go. But Mr. What's his name? The administrator of the hospital has been appointed by a minister of health, who the records will show was elected at the 2020 general and regional and general elections. The records will show that. There may be petitions and there may be arguments and all of that, but he is the de jure and the de facto Minister of Health. And he has appointed Mr. Small. And Joe Harmon can't move Mr. Small. If protests by a few people in Linden, if protests by less than 100 persons in Linden can move Mr. Small, well then we must know, those of us who are the students of politics will know, that will demonstrate real weakness on the part of the PPP.
Well, let me ask you a
And they
question
ain't
quickly.
gonna accept that.
Let me ask you a question quickly. You know, and I really want to ask you this question. If and you know the PPP's culture, if they put somebody there and they have the power to remove them, only they have the power to remove them. Let us say Rudy had raped a nurse. Let us say Rudy had raped a nurse and there were eyewitnesses. And
What are you
no,
doing?
just let me just ask you a question. It's hypothetical speaking. I'm not saying Rudy has raped a nurse. I'm just going to a worst case scenario. Let us say that the CEO would have raped a nurse, and the PPP said he has to stay there because we don't accept that has transpired.
Let me tell you something. Let me turn that question against you.
Don't turn it against me. I'm asking you a question. Don't turn. I'm just asking.
Well, I'm asking you, using your question. Listen, so all of that happened, and he still remains there.
That's the point. What is the purpose of an opposition if it cannot agitate, if it cannot represent, if it cannot defend? Why is an opposition there? What is the purpose of an opposition?
Well, we are trying to analyze, I think, the reason why the opposition is weak.
Well,
like I said
let's
to
go
you,
to Bevon. Let's go to Bevon before I come back to you.
The opposition?
Because you're dancing. Go ahead, Bevon. What are your thoughts? Philip, I'll get back to you. Promise.
It's so much. There's so much to digest as to what Mr. Bynoe eloquently articulated. All the positions about how the democracy work, etc. But the opposition lack testicular fortitude. They are morally bankrupt, in my opinion. If you're gonna have such a position, I think I was following the case a little. I think through your platform, Norman. If you're gonna have such a behavior of a elected member of any party to run a particular organization that give public service, under those circumstances, you have to bring into question the morality of the present opposition, because is it within the position to pressure the present regime to bring about that type of social change? So that's lack testicular fortitude, and that's moral bankruptcy, in my opinion. Because is the opposition saying that to be in favor of the present regime? Look, for example, we look at how Barry Jagdeo campaigned against the People's National Congress reform and the FC government when it was in power. He rigorously campaigned. He was in absolute campaign mode from the day they lost the election. He fought them on every single issue. One of the things that we have to understand as electorate is that politics is a blood sport. Politics is not sitting back and allowing the other man to turn the other and slap the other man. That's not how it works. The only way you can mobilize your electorate is that you have to bring about those type of forceful change.
It's the most
forcing hands.
All that point, because I don't want to cut you. All that point, because I don't want to cut you. I want you to continue with that point. But it is the most powerful point, I think, for the night. And I want to take you to something that you will realize the point you've made and how salient it is.
Into government. Politics is no longer only local. It is both local, it is international. But probably the thing I want to promise you the most is to return this party to a grassroots party. Return this party to a party in which you can up your phone and get your leaders. Not leaders who come to you election time and after that, they're gone. We need that is in touch with our people. We need leadership who know our people. We need leadership who understand our people. That is the type of leadership I intend to give to this party. My friends, this party has to have a strong information technology unit. It has to have a strong research and development unit. I don't want to go into details, but those units will be established. Intelligence is important to the party. I have always said, if the party leaders were on the ground, they would have no Charanda sell house. They would have no sell car. We must be on the ground in such a way that we know everything that is happening. And so we will be in contact with you, our members. As a political
Yeah. Bevon, I wanted to play that clip. It was a bit damaged from the recording. But I want to play it because what you were saying is exactly what Aubrey was saying also. Continue.
I think I listened to Joseph Armand, and I was against Joseph Armand being selected to be in the position that he hold in the People's National Reform when they was in power. I think in following Joseph Armand, I don't follow him that much, but a little that I've known of Joseph Armand, I think his intellectual ecosystem is completely empty. You cannot talk about the type of technology and information that we need, and I think he had a massive lack of judgment when Bai Shanlin was under investigation, and I think he had some type of association to do with Bai Shanlin. The thing we talk about unable to remove an immoral man, a man that lack any type of decency, is social injustice, period, for the people in Indian. Joseph Armand would not be the person to affect or to create that type of energy and forcefulness to bring about that type of change that the people needed to see at that time in his leadership. He have demonstrated weakness for a very long time. So I never give any type of respect that he probably deserve. I'm not there to see all his so-called accomplishments or what have you, but I can safely say, based on the few and little that I've known, he's not the type of person that we want to be the leader of that party. And what I've learned, I think I had some civics lesson listening carefully to Mr. Bynoe. I said, a lot of respect with his political clout and his political knowledge and understanding. I think what he taught me in civics a few minutes ago was the election of the leader of the party as against the election of the person that represent the party in the national election. And I understand that the member that we're going to be electing in the next Congress would have 2 years, if I listen carefully, to work and to show the people and the electorate that he be the best candidate to lead them into election against the People's Progressive Party. So going back to Joseph Armand, in the little information that I've received, and I didn't do any research on him, he lacked the testicular fortitude to deliver a winning a ticket in whatever election that he will be running for. So I think mobilization is important. I think we got to come together. I think the young, the old, the entire voting demographic in the electorate has to come together. The diaspora has to help work in whatever way we possibly can to take the movements and progress in stages, as I just learned about the difference in the leadership and the leadership in the president election. I think all hands on deck at this point is a good democratic process. I talked about it before on the last podcast that we had, and I'm seeing that we are heading into that direction. But one of the things I want, in my opinion, I want Guyanese to understand, like I said earlier, that political progress should not be an abstract concept of sitting back and say, oh, we've been changing leaders between the two parties, as Mr. Bynoe actually mentioned, from since 1964 to current, between the PNC and the PPP, the PNC and the PPP. And we had mothers and fathers and sisters that died without seeing any type of meaningful progress. At the end of the day, most of the electorate, Norman, would want to know, because what we are going through with this little civics lessons I'm getting from you two guys, would actually want to know what would be the collective end results. And that's why I and obviously this, I always strongly debated about my economic position, and we're not going to talk about that right now, but it boils down to that eventually down the road, because Guyana been suffered economic and social injustice for a very, very, very long time. And some type of changes has to come about. We have to understand how things work financially, and we have to put the right people in place so that the distribution of wealth and services trickles down to the man who somewhat can't even actually read and write, based on the type of wealth that be coming out to Ghana, and would already start coming out to Ghana. So it's very important for young people to understand, for them to know the political landscape, understand how things work, understand it from the economic and the political dimensions of how things work. And I think with that, Norman, I think that would bring about the forceful changes that is necessary, because if most of the young people understand that, I think they would definitely know, based on record, that Mr. Joseph Armand is not the right person leading them into anything.
I think they understand
Because
that.
we already know.
I think they understand that, and that's why the revolution is happening now. Jadine Thompson in the comment section, Mr. Bynoe, said Mr. Harmon was there for more than 1 year, and all he has to show are letters and statements. What are your thoughts in wrapping up?
Letters and statements and press conferences and letters and statements. and press conferences and letters and statements. And we can go on and on and on and on. If you put together the number of letters that Mr. Harmon has written, they may fill a 50-foot or 40-foot container with all them letters what Mr. Harmon has written. People just read his letters and suck the teeth and throw it aside. Mr. Harmon, I hope you're listening, sir. If you are listening, opposition politics in Guyana is different than when you sat there and you enjoyed the fruits of governance. I knew that you were there in the 2015 elections. I knew that maybe you were there in the 2011 elections. But one thing I can say to you, sir, opposition politics now, in the context in which we find ourselves, do not require a man like you. And my friend, Mr. Richard Van Westchars, knows that I want to support him to be right up there in the echelons of leadership of the party, but not as the party leader. Listen to me. Mr. Aubrey Norton, as leader of this party, is the kind of leader that will go on a member's visit. I don't want to say meet the people's store or fan out. Those are old, beaten down terms. He will go on a member's visit. And Mr. Aubrey Norton is the kind of man that will walk in a poor comrade's kitchen and see her cooking a food and would open his pot and taste it. And he would take a bowl and he would sit down in a corner and say he want the first pot spoon of rice that come out of the pot. That is Mr. Aubrey Norton. That is the kind of man, and that is the kind of, and again, Roysdale, my good friend, that is the kind of grassroots empathy that Aubrey Norton will display. I don't know if Mr. Harmon has that. I don't know if Mr. Harmon is going to climb up a comrade's step and the step breaking down. And when they meet in the comrade's house and they walk in, the boards creaking and the boards look like you can pass through at any time. And then they go and open the comrade's pot and taste the food. I don't know if Mr. Joe Harmon can do that. But I know that Mr. Aubrey Norton will do that because I have known Aubrey since he was a little boy. I know the kind of fire Aubrey got in his belly. I know the kind of man that Aubrey Norton is. And when I endorse Aubrey Norton, I endorse Aubrey Norton because the PNC party, Barnum's party, is engaging rough seas.
Yes.
Rough seas.
Yes.
Stormy seas.
Terrible times.
And this party needs a helmsman. It needs a captain that can steer the ship to solid ground. And do not think that by electing Aubrey Norton as leader, you are going to weaken the backbone of the PPP. Don't think so. The PPP today is the most formidable political machine in this country. The PPP was able to muster the support of the entire CARICOM. Everybody being against Granger. Granger had a friend. The AP and UFC had a friend. And that is as a result of the ability of the PPP to mobilize and to organize their support.
Let me ask
So we need a man
Go ahead.
We need a man at the helm of the party today to build the party, strengthen the party, uplift the party, bring back the party's organs, the youth arms, the women's arms, bring them back, especially the women's arms. They must be dynamic. They must raise their head in every region. The PNC's women's arm and the PNC's youth arm must again become vibrant in all the 10 regions of this country. That is how we will be able to mobilize and garner support. There is no other way. So when I say to you, Norman, that I give Aubrey 2 years to lay the groundwork, to build the foundation, and to start to rebuild this party, that is what I mean. I ain't getting involved, and you notice, I am mixing up electing the party leader and doing the work that he has to do with confronting the PPP. The PNC today, as it stands, is in no position to confront the PPP. And that is why a man like Mr. Small can stay in his post, because the government is a de facto and a de jure government. And if they appointed Mr. Small, then Mr. Small has a de facto and a de jure right to remain where he is. So, Norman, my friend, there is a lot of work to be done. A lot of
And
work
of course,
to be done.
of course,
I want to make one point to the diaspora people.
Let me. I have to cut you because we got 3 minutes left. But let me ask you and Bevon this final question, and you can tie in the diaspora question. You can tie the diaspora question in. Bevon, if you were to make a call tonight, Phillip, if you were to make a call tonight, both of you, to the People's National Congress, to hold Congress at the appointed time, which is this weekend, if you were to make that call, how resounding would you want that call to be? Bevon and then Phillip.
It's very important. I think the time is now. I think the young people and the people at large in Guyana, in the diaspora, don't have the time to continue to play, like you said in the article today, whatever jiggery pokey they have to play to move party leadership for one or the other. It's very important for us to get us trained on the track, moving in the right direction. 2 years, you can run out in a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
We need to see the individual, which is Aubrey Norton, that we are supporting at this point, to start the wheel, to put the work in, for us to make the decision, ultimately to make the decision, whether we're going to bring him back for the party leadership in terms of presidential candidate or whatever the situation is. But that card needs to go now, and it needs to take place almost immediately.
Brilliantly. Phillip, your position. And you can tie in your diaspora point too. But we're wrapping up in 2 minutes.
Perhaps it is good that I can tie in the diaspora point with this particular question.
Yes, yes.
Unless folks who live in the diaspora can come to Guyana and cast their ballot, their words may only mean something insofar as it go towards mobilizing resources for elections. Let me tell you something. You see all this idle talk? Why you don't hear no talk about people calling on the PPP, please, you need crossover votes? Why the PPP don't need crossover votes? Why is only the PNC need crossover votes? Why they always talking about the PNC and you got to get crossover votes and crossover votes? Why the PPP don't have to get crossover votes? We will come back to that question
We'll have another show
time.
to discuss that. We'll have another show to discuss
I
that.
am not going to say, cannot call upon the PNC to hold its Congress at the appointed time. I will not do so. Congress, in order that Aubrey Norton's leadership and tenure is not sullied, dirtied with grumblings that they rigged the election for make Aubrey leader. I want everything to do with Congress to be in place. If everything is not in place to hold the Congress, I do not think that the Congress should be forced to be held. Vincent Alexander is a man of esteemed integrity. I know Vincent. Me and Vincent do many things.
I don't dispute that, but do you think that Annette Ferguson is a woman of great esteem? Because Vincent, if a motion is moved, Vincent has to investigate whether that motion was moved by foul means, whether that motion was moved because of politics and grandstanding.
No, do not confuse what Vincent has to do.
No.
Vincent's mandate is to investigate whether all the arrangements are in place for the holding of Congress on the 11th.
Yes.
That is Vincent's mandate.
Yes.
And if he feels that all the arrangements are not in place, well, then he will say so, and he will appoint a day when he thinks that the arrangements can be in place. And I think that Vincent is the best man to do that. The best man. His integrity is unquestioned, his honesty is unquestioned, and his objectivity will be brought to bear. That is the man, Vincent Alexander, that I know. So I ain't going to say Congress must be held on this day or that day or that day. I will wait to hear
what Vincent has to
Mr.
say.
Vincent
I agree. I agree with that. Gentlemen, sorry, we've gone over the 2 hours period. And so we have to wrap up. Bevon, your final point. We've gone over the 2 hours. We've gone over 2 hours, which is a hour-long show. But look, Bevon, your final point, and Philip, your final point, and then we'll call it an evening.
I enjoyed the discussion, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot from Mr. Bynoe, and I always respect him. He's a man with all the qualifications that the people in the diaspora listen to, and I think the people in Guyana who's electorate should listen to. And I think it's very important for them to understand that this is one of the most dreadful election in their lives, because we have a tendency of one party leading for a very long time, and we hope that this is not the case to the People's Progressive Party, which stay in power for as long as they possibly can, because we know they have the economic power to do so. So I hope that the people in the diaspora, so the electorate in Guyana, understand the social and economic consequences if they don't move swiftly and intellectually to get that party out of power by any means necessary. So I would support any cause, grassroots movements especially, so we can bring about the type of changes that is necessary for the salvation, I would say, for the Cooperative Republic of Guyana.
Phillip Bynoe, closing.
Norman, let me close by saying I am gratified and heartened that I am having a discussion on the voice of the diaspora, and I am not sweating and fanning and arguing and rubbing with my friend Norman.
Sometimes, that...
Yeah. But let me make my closing remark. Listen, yes. Norman, I have to clear up a point you made earlier. Listen, you said that Guyana is now, or something to the effect that Guyana is now having good economic fortunes. We have oil.
I never said that. I said we got oil, but I don't think we have good economic fortunes.
Well, look, you're right, because especially my friends in the diaspora who are listening, listen, folks, Guyana ain't got no oil. Guyanese will not see not even 5 cents from this oil wealth. Understand that as I speak to you here, an oil ship is being loaded with millions of barrels of oil all in the name of ExxonMobil, and it is leaving our shores and it is going into their pockets. Until and unless the elected government, whether it's the coalition or the PPP, until and unless they can have and develop the testicular fortitude to change the contract that they signed with ExxonMobil, well then, cat eat we dinner. Y'all hear was saying, all our oil resources will go for naught. Let me tell you something about the brilliance of Forbes Burnham before I close. Forbes Burnham knew that Guyana had oil. But Forbes Burnham also knew that in the context of the reality of the world, with the Western world pitted against the non-aligned movement, of which Guyana was a leading member, Forbes Burnham knew that he could not have properly exploited his oil resources because of the reality of the world. This current government and the former APNU government could not have confronted and spoken to ExxonMobil properly. In fact, and I stand corrected here, I think it was Mr. I always forget his name, Mr. Raphael Trotman, that went to Houston, Texas, and enjoyed all the beautiful things about the high-end life. When he signed the final contract for ExxonMobil and brought it back, and then it was endorsed by the APNU AFC cabinet. So if you want to talk about selling Guyana short, if you want to talk about selling our resources for nothing, and this is a reality we have to live with. We cannot ignore this reality. This has happened. This is history. ExxonMobil has the contract that they have. And every now and again, Barajaglio comes and he tries to mama guy and say, man, they're going to renegotiate this and renegotiate that, and they're not going to flare, and a lot of little peripheral crap. This time, while all of this is going on, the people carrying away millions of barrels of oil, and Guyana getting Laura. That's what we get.
Gentlemen, I have to bring you.
Close the program on this note and say thank you very much for this.
I have to bring you back to talk about oil exclusively. But of course, you know, it has been a great program tonight. We started off with a bit of shaky footing and so on. But I think we would have panned out, and I hope that the Congress is panned out in a way where elections are held this weekend, and that a leader would be elected, and that we begin the work to rebuild the party, to rebuild the PNC, and to do what is necessary to save Guyana, and for the redistribution of the wealth of Guyana to be enjoyed by all, and that injustices and wrongs would be minimal to anyone, much less to a particular group. And so I thank you very much, Mr. Bevon Wint from the United States of America, and Mr. Phillip Bynoe from Linden, Guyana, former member of parliament. I want to thank you guys very much for being on this program. And until then, I leave my viewers with this.
We have to have a strong legal team to keep the PPP busy and to represent our support this. I promise you as party leader, there will be such a team. And I want you to know this, not because somebody supported another candidate when I become leader, that person is dead. I believe This party has been destroyed in some regard by this approach in which when one doesn't support you, you decide that that person has to die, has to be marginalized. We will change that. There are going to be many people who did not support me, but who have the requisite skill that will be in the leadership of the People's National Congress. We will unite this party. And I believe it is fairly easy for me to unite the party. I think I'm still the only candidate that didn't attack another candidate. And I allow them to attack, even be malicious. But you know why I don't attack? I don't attack because I know for the unity of this party, I will have to work with my attackers.
We'll open the gap.